Hi everybody, I'm Nathan and I hope that things are going well in your world. Today I'm going to be playing actually Jeskai Geist in another league, but I do want to point out, well, I have a couple of things to point out before we get started. One, I saw that some of you voted, thank you to those who did on the straw poll, and actually XY Thing in the Ice deck was voted the #1 choice for me to play the next week, which is this week. But here's the thing. I actually have an event coming up, the Bazaar of Moxen, and I've been really debating what to play, and I think that I'm just going to play this deck or some version of it. So I decided to run it through another daily event to see if I can improve on my 3-2 record, just to continue sort of refine different card choices. And I want to talk about what I think I'm going to play and what my decisions are, or what I think I'm going to play, and we'll go over that list in just a second. But before I do, actually I want to also give a shout out to Nick Hansen. Nick is a follower of the YouTube channel. He's sent me several different messages on Facebook, and we've kind of gone back and forth on different card choices, and he actually piloted, I don't want to say he piloted my list, but it was definitely I will take the liberty to say it was maybe Great Nate inspired. He had some card choices that I was trying out, and he went 13th at a Saturday Star City Games modern event. I don't know how many players were in it, but it was something like 15 rounds. And I think he might have even gone, I read something about somebody being DQ'd, so he may have officially been like 12th or 11th. But I think it's obviously a great showing. It's a testament to Nick's skill with the deck, because piloting any deck in Magic that many rounds to that many wins is a feat in and of itself. But I think it's also just another clear signal that Jeskai midrange, Jeskai Geist, Team Geist, with practice and with a good list, there's no reason that you can't perform well at a major event with the deck. So congratulations to you, Nick. Okay, so let's look at what I've been working with. So this is, I can't remember, I don't want to give away the record thus far and spoil anything, but let me look at something here for the list. Okay, so this is the 75 that I'm currently playing in a league. The one change that I made was I dropped a Ghost Quarter for a Glacial Fortress, but I think the list I plan to play at the Bazaar of Moxen, I'm actually just going to go ahead and run 2 Ghost Quarters. I still think that the mana is pretty solid. You occasionally will draw 2 Ghost Quarters and it's annoying, but I think having a couple Ghost Quarters improves things like Infect, Affinity, Jund, and there's still actually Tron floating around out there, so I like having access to those 2 utility lands. So this is what I'm running in the league. I want to try Timely Reinforcements because while against the straight burn list, I think that Core Firewalker is better. Timely is a spell that you can bring in against Zoo list. It's also a spell for burn, but it's also a spell that you can bring in against Jund. So I think that I'd rather have more diverse sideboard cards. I want my sideboard cards to be as diverse as possible, but I also want them to be as impactful as possible. Things like Rest in Peace, Stone Age Silence, stuff like that. But I think I'm gonna. Okay, well, let's talk about the counter spells. And actually, let's talk about Serum Visions. I've been running 3 for quite a while. Recently, I started running 4. And the thing is, it's not that the deck doesn't want Serum Visions, but we want to try and avoid going like Serum Visions into more Serum Visions. I mean, sometimes it's fine, but when you run 4, you just see more of them. And I actually think 3 is the right number in this deck, because you're also doing things with your mana a lot, and sometimes you don't always have the time to cast Serum Visions. And listen, I've put plenty of videos and had people be like, look, Serum Visions is bad. You never had time to cast it. That is the exception to the rule. It cost 1 mana. We are a deck with 24 lands. We are not a deck that wins on turn 4 or 5. We have time and mana to cast Serum Visions basically, and sometimes it is totally right to just shock yourself to do it on turn 1. I think the deck is more consistent with Serum Visions. I think Serum Visions gives you the possibility to set up a win in a way that you can't when you're just drawing off the top. I recently played something similar to an old version with just 4 Remands and a couple Electrolyzes as the only card draw. I actually also played 3 Cryptics. That was the theory one. And I found out that just not having Serum Visions, you know, there are times when you would have drawn it and you much rather just would have had a Serum Vision. I'm not sure. There's sometimes when you rather it would have been a real spell. But every time, I'm almost always happy to see a Serum Visions. Let's just put it at that. I think 3 is the right number for the deck. That's what I'm going to run. I think the meta's really aggressive. And I'm not the biggest fan of Spell Snare, but I am going to go ahead and run 2 Spell Snare. I wasn't impressed enough by Spell Pierce. I did get some people with Spell Pierce, but I also had Spell Pierce be dead a lot. There's still so many relevant targets for Spell Snare. I'm not going to go over all of them, but there's a ton. Snapcaster Mage, Sylvan Library, Cranioplating, Arcbound Ravager, Spellskite, the list goes on. Other counter spells. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm committed to this for sure. I'm committed to this for sure. I'm committed to 2 Remands, 4 Snapcaster Mages. But the flex right now is, okay, there's a few things that I'm unsure of. And let me just go ahead and flip over to the more updated list. Okay, one is, oh man, I hate when that does that. One of them is Logic Knot and Izzet Charm. I've been really impressed with Logic Knot lately, and I like how, I like it as a one of. I like how it is, and I think I'm just going to go ahead and run it. Normally in this spot I would run 2 Remand, 2 Leak. Double blue on turn 2 is not difficult for this deck. That's basically Colonnade into Steam Vents or Hollowed Fountain, or, you know, Steam Vents into Hollowed Fountain. It may occasionally come up when you can't cast it, but I think that the thing is, even if you can't cast it on 2, it's still going to be live later. And I really like having a counter spell that is basically just counter spell the longer the game goes. So I think I'm pretty committed to a Logic Knot. The one that I'm certainly unsure of is this Izzet Charm. If I wasn't going to run Izzet Charm, I think I'd just run a Mana Leak here, but I've actually been pretty impressed with Izzet Charm. The meta is aggressive, and it's actually not a bad thing to just have another removal spell. Against combo decks that are like trying to tap out and stuff like that, Izzet Charm is serviceable, and I've actually had it win me games a couple of times by basically just holding extra lands when I already had a bunch of lands in play, and Izzet Charming them away to like find burn or something like that. So it's just a nice flexible spell, and draw 2, discard 2 is not something the deck typically wants, but if the game has gone long and you have some extra cards, it is pretty nice. So this is something that here's the thing. I've been pretty pleased with Izzet Charm, but I've never been like downright. It's never been downright awful. It's never been like, oh my god, this is the worst spell. You know, like even Spell Snare has been worse than Izzet Charm. Like when Spell Snare's awful, Izzet Charm isn't as bad. You can always cycle it away. Definitely running 4 Geist, 2 Clicks, 3 Restos. There have been times that I want 4 Restos. There have been times that I want no Cryptic Commands, 1 or 2 Cryptic Commands. I like having access to Cryptic Command in general. If this wasn't going to be a Cryptic Command, it would be a second Electrolyze. The thing is, I feel like you really only want the extra Electrolyzes against Affinity, and the only other deck you really want them against for sure is like against things running Kitchen Finks or Lingering Souls. But the thing is, against Affinity, we also have Anger of the Gods, we have Wrath of God, we have Engineered Explosives, we have Wear Terrors, we have Izzet Staticaster. I've even considered cutting all the Electrolyze, to be completely honest, in favor of maybe even a 4th Resto, a 3rd Click, probably. It's hard to say. But against, you know, I guess we could also want it against Elves, but really it's just okay in that matchup. I mean, it's good. You want to kill more than one thing, but you really need to lean more on things like Anger of the Gods and Wrath of God against Elves. Electrolyze is, it's great, but it's not like having 2 electrolytes isn't going to make you win against elves. And against Kitchen Finks, I mean, again, that's a big creature-based matchup. I'd much rather have like Anger of the Gods and Wraths and maybe Static Casters. So I think it's okay to run 1 Electrolyze. Geist isn't really a Cryptic Command deck, but when the game goes long, sometimes it's nice to just have a very hard no. And the thing is, because the deck runs 4 Snapcaster Mages, if the game's really gone that long, there are times when you can like Cryptic bounce a Snapcaster Mage and then you have access to Cryptic again. So sometimes 1 Cryptic can actually be like 2 Cryptics and 2 cards. So I think running 1 is okay. The other thing I've said before in my videos is that I want everything above Geist on the curve to be something that enables him to attack. Cards that do that are typically Restoration Angel, but Cryptic Command can also do that. Now, you may want to argue that maybe Cryptic Command should just be the 4th Restoration Angel, but the thing is, like, sometimes the deck can struggle with, like, ramp strategies, various other things, right? And Cryptic Command is one of our only spells that we have to get rid of problematic permanents. It's one of our only, like, truly hard counters. And because it, in some ways, does the same thing that Resto and Cryptic does with Geist of St. Traft, I'm almost more willing to just have the Cryptic Command instead of the Restoration Angel, just to give the deck some more flexibility. Just so that sometimes you have the Cryptic. Sometimes you can tap their team and attack with Geist. You know, sometimes it can help you win the Tempo War. When I was testing the 4-man 3 Cryptic list, I actually won a game simply on the back of Cryptics by tapping their team and bouncing something. One turn I won the game because I was able to like tap and bounce a land to keep them from like playing something that I knew I had seen in their hand with like a click or something like that. So there is some synergy with Cryptic in the aggressive nature, but again, I think it's a spell that in this deck you really only want 1 of, unless the meta is such, like if the meta was super heavy Jund, maybe you could make a case for 2 or 3, but I think this is the main that I'm going to run. I just have to decide to make some calls on this Izzet Charm. Okay, so outside of that, I'm going to eschew the core Firewalkers for the timely reinforcements, I said, because of more flexibility. I think that people believe there is a lot of blue decks out right now. I don't know if it's true, but I expect to see things like Thrun. Wrath also has applicability to elves, to merfolk if they don't counter it. It kills Etch Champion. It's a card that you can bring in against Abzan, against Jund, against any creature-based deck, really. Obviously, we don't want to kill our own Geist, but if we're bringing in Wrath, we may be shaving on 1 or 2 anyway. Stony Silence is clear. That is for Landry control. That is for Affinity. That is for any traditional Tron lists. The new Eldrazi Tron aren't really running as many artifacts. And then I have like a nice counter magic package here, which is I'm trying to keep it flexible. I don't know why it's not letting me sort, but basically the Dispel, because I can't in this view. That's fine, but these are my extra counters. I like, Counterflux used to see more play. And I started testing with it again, and I've been pretty happy with it because, like, you can even bring Counterflux in against Jund. And unlike, say, Remand, which isn't great against Jund because their spells are so cheap, or Mana Leak, which isn't great against Jund because the games sometimes go really long and then Mana Leak's dead, Counterflux is just always going to be an answer to basically anything they play outside of Manlands. So you just want to trade resources. Really, against Jund, the way you're going to try to win that game is just trade as much as you can until you can land an Elspeth or Karanos. You just want to survive and try to find Elspeth or Karanos, which is another reason that I'm happy to have Serum Visions in the deck. It helps you find sideboard cards. Okay, so obviously Elspeth and Karanos are mainly for Jund. They're also for control lists. Karanos I bring in typically against anything where I'm being a control deck because it helps you, eventually, like, especially the only real mode that this deck can operate on as a control deck is against creature decks. Against spell-based decks, we don't really have enough spells for that. We're more on a beatdown plan there. But Karanos just ensures that you can take over the game. It helps you be a better control deck. If you have a hand with, like, Bolt, Helix, Electrolyze, you're eventually going to run out of cards, and they're not going to run out of creatures. So Keranos just helps you fill back up. Surgical is an interesting one. I'm testing this because it's really mainly in there for things like I'd like to run Rest in Peace because I love how Rest in Peace really shuts the door on graveyard-based decks. But Surgical Extraction is trying to target certain things in graveyard-based decks that either shut down the engine of those decks or keep you from winning. So we're talking about things like Ensnaring Bridge and Lantern Control, because that's really the card we can't beat. You know, we're going to have a hand with some threat eventually, and unless they have the really fast lock, we're going to get a Geist or something in our hand. Surgical Extraction is great because since they do a lot of self-mill, if they mill their Ensnaring Bridge, you Surgical Extract it, now your creatures are clear to attack for the rest of the game, and you will probably, there's a good chance you will win unless you're already under the lock and don't have any creatures in play. I already talked about the counter spell suite, but I will say, like, Dispel's good against Burn, it's good against Infect, you can bring in Negate against Burn, might be a little too slow against Infect. They're also great to bring in against things like Scape Shift. You can bring all of these in, and then you're much better set up because you have this nice answer, and then you have the Dispels and the Gates to help you win counter rewards. You also have the Remands to remand your own spells, the Spell Snares to fight against theirs. So I do like having, you know, the Spell Snares and such to sort of fight against those decks. Anger of the Gods is for Merfolk, Anger of the Gods is for Elves, Anger of the Gods is for Death and Taxes, Anger of the Gods is for Malira Company mainly. Izzet Charm is for Lingering Souls, it's for Affinity, you can bring it in against Infect, anything with a lot of small creatures are bringing it in against Death and Taxes. Engineered Explosives and Wear Tears are kind of catch-all answers for things that we don't expect. This list has typically run 2 of each in the past, but and that's actually how I used to start my sideboard in Jeskai Geist, was 2 Engineered Explosives, 2 Wear Tears, go from there. But we also have a lot of other ways to kill things like, you know, things from Affinity, like we have our Wrath, we have our Anger, we have our Staticaster, we have a bunch of other removal, Wear Tears, but Engineered Explosives is still great. Obviously this list is really safe, is really soft against decks like Boggles. I've thought about putting Celestial Flares in the list, I've thought about Hibernations, but the reality is just that matchup's really bad, and there's not really a great way to make it good. So if you play against Boggles, we have our Wrath, we have our Anger, we have our Engineered Explosives, and we just kind of have to hope that that's enough. We have the Wear Tear. Against Infect, we have tons of removal. Yeah, so I guess that's talking about the list enough. I think that this is a pretty, I would call it reasonably tuned in that, you know, I think I can sort of justify why I have the numbers that I do for each card. Again, the only area that I'm still unsure of is probably this Izzet Charm. It's either going to be a Mana Leak or an Izzet Charm. I'm really not sure yet. The nice thing about Mana Leak is we're already making ourselves have this double and then triple blue here. It may just, you know, to have like, we have to have red, white, red, blue, double blue. It might be too much. It might just be better to have the leak just to make things maybe a little bit easier on our mana. I'm not sure yet. Anyway, okay, well that's enough rambling about the deck. I just wanted to share with you guys where I am. This is the list that I'm actually running in the league. So let me show you guys the first match. See you in a moment. Okay, so this is the first round of another league with Jeskai Geist. And I believe I did mention it, but the reason I'm not playing Thing in the Ice is just because I had a really busy weekend, so I didn't even have time. I wanted to do like a Thing in the Ice video on Saturday too, or do something, but I just didn't have time. And then also, I know I'm going to play Geist at the Bazaar of Moxen, so I started another league with it. That's the deck I should really be focusing on, so I'll save Thing in the Ice till next week, because I just wanted to get more reps in with my favorite deck. Okay, so actually I don't press that, I press this. Alright, so this was my opening hand. Obviously we had a mulligan, it just had an Igondro Castle. I believe I kept this. It did. Scribe the island to the bottom. Is this updating? Okay, it is. Sometimes this doesn't always follow the game. Um, kind of not the greatest draw, but it has our most proactive spell, so there's nothing wrong with that. Our opponent exiled Riftbolt, so I'm actually glad to have the Geist, so at least I have a really fast clock. And clear, I'm hoping here that Searing Visions can draw us out of something. Now, I could have played Island with the Searing Visions in case I drew a path, and that might have been better. But what I remember thinking at the time was, well, I'll just go ahead and cast the Searing Visions. Oh, I know what it was. I didn't actually want to do that because if I drew like a Scalding Tarn, I wanted to be able to get red mana online. So that was I didn't see what that was, but I believe it was a land, and I bottomed it, and I believe I bottomed the Geist. And so here I actually just went ahead and, even though I was thinking, or even though I said let's get the red online, I think what I was thinking is, well, I don't have anything else to do that I know of. I don't want to I need to find removal. I need to find answers. I've put non-answers. I put the cards I don't want at the bottom, so I actually don't want to shuffle the deck because I want the chance to be as high as possible that I draw what I'm looking for. And here, at least I can have a painless way to get Geist into play. So we're kind of in a position here. The Spell Snare is going to be nice. Obviously, I'm going to play Geist, and I'm in a position where I'm probably going to lose it to the Swift Spear, but I need to just try to buy time. So I think it's correct to block, even though I think Geist will die. That way I can just try to get another draw step, find removal for this. If I found a path, then we have Snare up for something and path for the creatures. So I went ahead and did that, and my opponent actually made a mistake, if I remember right, and he clicked through. I don't know if it'll save the chat, but he like put period, period, period. Oh yeah. So that little mistake probably cost him the game. I mean, he only had 2 cards in hand at this point. We're still at 12, but we didn't yet have an answer to that Swift Spear, so it could have gone some distance. And we even drew another land. So at this point, we were able to obviously just start getting busy, killing our opponent. Actually, we drew pretty terribly this game. We drew lots of lands, even though we scryed lands to the bottom. I guess we did draw 1 Spell Snare. So that's basically the game there. Our opponent can't kill us before we can kill him, even if we fetch. So we went ahead and we actually drew Ghost Quarter so we could painlessly play Colonnade, and obviously just our opponent's dead to a Colonnade and Geist attack at this point. So kind of unfortunate for our opponent. But the thing is, like, as you guys have seen probably from many of my videos, Burn is a really good matchup. It's certainly a matchup that I can lose, but this deck has a great matchup against Burn. So, you know, I don't feel like I need to acquire any information, even if my opponent are drawing well. Like if we both drew equally, I think that we're heavily favored. Okay, so let's check out the second game. Yep. So this is the first round, still second game of the first round against Burn. Let's see how this one went. This looks like a pretty fantastic opener. We can get a Steam Vents to turn on this Lightning Helix. We also have Spell Snare, Bolt, Negate. We really can't, and a Geist. We honestly can't ask for anything better. Really happy not to see a creature there. So obviously this Riftbolt's going to resolve, and there's nothing we can do about it. And our opponent suspended more Riftbolts. I do remember thinking, okay, let's say my opponent goes Eidolon. Do I Spell Snare it? And I think the correct thing to do there is to just get the Steam Vents and Helix it. But he didn't. So now we have our we're definitely going to have the Helix online. I debated for a moment playing the Plains because I thought, well, then I could like definitely play this. I could definitely trade Negate with a Rift Bolt. But I just decided to like try to get my mana into play in as painless a manner as possible. And I felt like, you know what, this Spell Snare is probably going to be able to trade with something. And the nice thing about Negate is it's always going to be live late against Burn. So kind of what I said happened there. And I actually... Okay, so I thought I was going to play Geist. I think I chose to just... I was like, oh, well, you know what? Oh, I know what it was. I knew that I could... So I don't remember if I did it at the upkeep, but what I actually decided to do was see if... Yeah, I was going to see if my opponent played a land. Either way, it wouldn't have really mattered. But I was like, okay, well... What I wanted to try and enable, what I'm trying to say here, is I knew that I could fire this Helix off at my opponent, force him to try and Skullcracker or Tarkus Command it, and make nice use of this Spell Snare. So I get to basically, and I wasn't saying, then if he doesn't have it, if he didn't do anything, then I get to play Geist and then hold up Bolt or Spell Snare. But I think this is a great way to do this. As expected, our opponent is forced to Skullcrack, so we get to make sure that we trade one of our counter spells for one of his burn spells while making sure that we gain life. And then we get to play our Geist and hold up a Bolt in case he plays a creature, which he did. And it might not be clear, but I was actually relatively pleased with this line. It's not a big deal, but I don't want to lose Geist. But here's the thing, like, he only has mana to, at maximum, play 2 spells. He only has 2 spells in his hand. So they'd have to both be 1 mana. So if we block with Geist, then he's forced to cast one of them to save the Monastery Swift Spear and Killer Geist of St. Traft, which means that we're then safe to go ahead and bolt the Swift Spear, because even if he has another 1 mana spell, the first Powers trigger wouldn't have resolved, so the second one will trigger, it'll go to 3 toughness and then die to bolt. So that was definitely 100% the best line, which is exactly what happened. So even if he has another bolt in his hand, right, we go bolt. And even if he had bolted again, the Swift Spear still would have died. So that makes sure that the path is clear for Geist. That makes sure that we get to kill his creature. And we get to sit on this Negate. So clearly going to play the Colonnade here. Attack. Our opponent has no cards in hand. He has a Suspended Rift Bolt, which we're going to, of course, negate and then untap. And I clicked a little quickly. My plan was to like untap, play the land, attack with Colonnade and Geist, but we also drew a Bolt, so it was fine. And our opponent didn't even give us a chance to use it. It was pretty clear that that match was over. So as usual, Burn, good matchup. Yeah, that's it. So yeah, this is the deck that I'm playing. This is the deck that I think I'm going to play. Still hesitant on the Cryptic. I mean, one of my issues with Cryptic is that I love Cryptic Command. And I certainly would never I wouldn't be running 4 in this type of deck, but I do think that 1 is completely a reasonable home. But I am often tilted towards it just because I really like it. Anyway, for those of you who love watching me play Geist, I hope you enjoyed the video. For those of you who would like to see something else, don't worry, it's coming soon. If I didn't have an event this week, I would have went ahead and like found one of the Grixis thing lists, tweaked it to my own preferences, and gone from there. Again, shout out to Nick Hansen for going 13th, maybe a little more, in a recent SCG event. Awesome job, dude. I hope to repeat your endeavor. I would be. Let's see, what are my goals? My goals for the event are: I'd like to make my first par, if you will, is if I can make top 64, I'll feel like that was okay. Not great, but it was solid. But my real goal for myself, I guess, is I believe that I could definitely make the top 24 with the deck. Obviously, top 8 is like the massive goal. But if I can come back to you guys and say that I made top 24, I'd be super thrilled. We'll see, though. It's Magic, right? You know, I've won a GPT, I've won a PPTQ, I've 5-out events, and I've like won 4 events. I've gone like, I didn't play this deck, but at a recent Modern tournament, I went like win, draw, loss, and dropped out of the tournament or something like that. So, you know, even if you feel like you're reasonably skilled and you have a reasonable deck, sometimes things don't always go your way. And I feel like I have a great mental state for this tournament because I want to go and do well, but I'm also just looking forward to going and having fun. I'm actually just looking forward to playing, like, it may sound kind of nerdy, but, you know, my Jeskai deck is foiled. It's my baby. Like, I'm just kind of looking forward to, like, putting it in brand new sleeves and jamming with my favorite cards in Modern. And I don't think that's a crime. So anyway, guys, as always, thank you. Like, subscribe. I will see you tomorrow. Until then, draw well and smash face.